Welcome. You're watching Rugby with Rifle, a podcast about all things rugby and life, with your host, Danny Pabone and Rifle Scudder.
Welcome to Rugby with Rifle, a podcast about all things rugby and life. As always, I'm joined here with my friend Rifle. Rifle, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing good today. Thanks, Danny. How about you?
Doing great, doing great. This weekend, as you say, there's a 1.5 sleep until the rugby championship returns, and we
No,
have.
for me, it's two sleeps because we play American time, Eastern time here. South Africa play at 11 in the
Oh,
morning.
okay. So
So
you have
I,
two
I, I
full
get two
sleeps?
full sleeps. If you're a New Zealand fan or Australian fan, then it's only 1.5 because I play at 1 o'clock in the morning our time. So
Oh,
depends on who
okay.
you shout for, but I get two sleeps this time.
So you get two full sleeps, so that's
I
that's
do,
good.
yeah.
And obviously, we have New Zealand versus Australia for the final two matches of the Rugby Championship, and we have South Africa versus Argentina for their two final matches of the Rugby Championship. And like we stated before, it's really anybody's series to win because the points they're all close, and yeah, it's going to be an exciting last two matches for all four teams to see who takes the title of the champions of the 2025 Rugby Championship. So it's going to be interesting last two matches, definitely.
Very much so, especially because Australia and New Zealand, they're playing not just for the rugby competition, but they're also playing for the Bledisloe Cup. So
Mm.
for them, it's their big competition that they've had. They've just incorporated it into this competition, but they once a year they play that. So that's a huge thing for those two countries. So it's going to be a huge weekend. Yeah.
Yes, yes, it is. And in keeping with that tradition of the Rugby Championship, in this episode, we just wanted to really skim the surface of the rivalry between the All Blacks and Springboks, being that this rivalry goes back to August of 1921 when their first match between these two powerhouses of rugby was played. So that's 104 years ago. So it's a long, rich history. And probably many will say it's probably the greatest rivalry in rugby. Um, I would say the majority of rugby fans would say that. Obviously there's going to be a few that won't. But yeah, it's a long, rich history of these two powerhouses, the Springboks and All Blacks, dating back to 1921. And obviously that's way before we were born. Well, yeah, both of us way before both of us were born. So yeah, it's great to be learning about the history of these two teams, and we just wanted just to highlight maybe five or so games or instances in the rivalry during this episode. I know Rifle, just to start off the episode, the 2004 Tri Nations competition, which is now known as the Rugby Championship. That was a special competition for you because you told me this was the first, during that competition, was the first game you introduced your wife to rugby. So that must have been very interesting for you.
It wasn't the first game that I introduced her to rugby. It was the first live Springbok game or
Oh,
live
okay. I'm
rugby game
sorry.
for that matter
Okay.
that she went to.
Okay.
She arrived because Tiffany's from Taiwan. She's Taiwanese. So she arrived in South Africa
Mhm.
on July 31st in 2004. And that was a Saturday and it was during the Tri Nations. So I went to the airport early to pick her up. not had to, but we rushed home so we could be in time for South Africa playing Australia. So we played, Springboks played Australia that day that she arrived. So we had to make sure that she couldn't be later. And then when she got home, I said to her, well, this is the first game of rugby. Those people in the orange jerseys, those are the Aussies. The Wallabies, green, that's your team that you scream for now. Those are the Springboks. 15 on the field for this team, 15 on the field for that team. This side over here has to put the ball behind that line. That side has to put the ball behind that line. And at the end of the 80 minutes, the team who has the most points, they win. That's all you have to know. That's your first day of rugby class. That's all you got to remember. And then it was that year, just a couple of weeks later, where we went to Ellis Park. And it was amazing because South Africa won that year. Our centre that day scored a hat trick. I mean, that doesn't happen against the All Blacks. He scored 3 tries, and my mom and dad were there as well. So my whole family, well, not my whole family, but mom and dad and Tiffany and myself, we got tickets. We went to the game, and it was just electric. It was just so amazing. So that 2004, I've still got my shirt from that day. South Africa Tri-Nation Champions 2004, and very, very exciting day for me. It's a very good memory, as are so many memories of South Africa, the Springboks versus New Zealand. I mean, growing up as a little boy, I remember watching the tests early in the morning. We'd have to wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning in South Africa. My dad had so many friends over at our place and all the men watching rugby, and it was early. It was such amazing times and such good memories to this day. So, talking about the rivalry and New Zealand, and, I'm in my 50s now. So this has literally been going on for more than 50 years for me. And it's a wonderful memory. It brings back so many great times in my life. So, yeah. But 2004 definitely special, yes.
Wow. So that was Tiffany, your wife's first live experience at a rugby
Yeah,
game.
live
And
game, and it had. I mean, you can't get bigger than South Africa versus the All Blacks. So it was her
wow.
first game, and it was just amazing. So one wonderful experience for all of us.
So you got on the phone with the pilot of the airline she was flying. Say, hey, you make sure you get that plane here on time.
Yeah, yeah. We did everything we could to make it happen.
So yeah, that was a sure a very special moment in this rivalry, being that the people you spend it with at that game. I'm sure it was very special day for you. And again, there's so many great moments and amazing games. Just watching highlights of the different games throughout the years, it was wow. There was a lot of games where it was woof, it was tense. And it's funny because in some of the games, just watching the scrum, how the scrum was back in the 90s. And I know we have spoken about this in another episode. You know, if you're new to rugby, if anybody watching is new to rugby, the scrum is the play that most people recognize from rugby, which is 8 players from one team against 8 players from the other team, crouched, pushing up against each other, with one team having the ball and trying to bring it to the scrum half. That's the play that most people recognize for rugby. At least that's what I recognized before I started learning about the game, and just seeing the players just crouching and boom and hitting each other at the same time. That's how the scrum was performed back in the day before, now the referee controls the scrum pretty much. Yeah, it was a lot of just watching those scrums. I was like, oh man. So yeah, it was very interesting to see. So just another moment in the history of this rivalry was was which some will probably consider one of the greatest rugby players, by the name of Jonah, uh, and
Lomu,
please, Lomu. Okay, I was gonna say Lomu,
Jonah
Lomu,
Lomu.
and uh, and another player of Springboks. You say one of the greatest scrum halves in history, and I'm not even gonna try to pronounce his name, so I'll let you do that.
Joost van der Westhuizen.
Okay, see, I've heard that name 100 times already, and I still can't pronounce it. So another moment between those two, and this was I forget the year of was it 1995?
The Rugby World Cup
Okay,
1995,
yes.
yes.
So the Rugby World Cup of 1995, where another historic moment. For those of you who don't know, this was the first Rugby World Cup that South Africa was allowed to play in due to their section sanctions because of the apartheid government that South Africa had in the 80s. And so yeah, so that was a historic moment there. And you say that uh, your scrum half, again, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his name, uh, really was the saving tackle for the Springboks, and is one of the plays that allowed the Springboks to win, or to at least to get to the final, if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, this was the final.
That was the final, yes,
Yes.
definitely.
So
Was
yeah,
the
so
final.
it was one of the plays that allowed the Springboks to really take the Rugby World Cup and win the Rugby World Cup in 1995. So yeah.
Yeah, there were definitely a couple, just off the top of my head. Obviously, when time was up, full time was up, and it was a draw. Then you have to play more because it's the
Mhm.
World Cup final. And then in the last minutes of the game, our fly half Joel Stransky put over a drop goal. I mean, that will go down in the chronicles of rugby forever. But that was amazing. But another one was literally when Joost van der Westhuizen had to stop Jonah Lomu, where they got a ball from a scrum, they were passing, and then Jonah came in a straight line coming on the inside. And when the back line is kind of running towards the left to try and tackle the back line, and someone cuts in and they change the angle of play, it's very, very difficult to stop a normal human being. But there was nothing normal about Jonah. He was an absolute tank. He was so strong. He was so powerful. If you go and watch highlights of the 95 World Cup, how New Zealand got there, and what he did to players, for example, England, Mike Catt, absolutely just literally Mike Catt in the perfect tackle position, and Loma just ran literally right over him. And the next thing, and you can hear Catt talking about it now, he said the next thing he was lying on his back, and Joma had ran right over him. So in that game, when Jonah got the ball, everyone thought, because he was just so strong and powerful. I mean, New Zealand was so good. I don't know what the percentage was of people thinking that South Africa could do it, but there was Joost, and it was Jonah coming at full pace with the ball in his hand. It's one of the most scary things I think you can see in rugby, is this beast of a man coming at you at full pace and wanting to go for that try line. And in front of him is Joost, and Joost tackled him. And I mean, there are two or three times where Joost got him, because Jonah was obviously the biggest danger. So the word that went out, is you do not give that guy a meter to run, because he's so strong, he'll just break through tackles. You got to get him as soon as he gets the ball. So we were really watching and marking him. But in this play, he gets the ball from a set play, and there's Joost van der Westhuizen in front of him, and by the grace of God, Joost tackled him and he went down. And I mean, not the whole, but people who watch that and people who enjoy rugby talk about that. That was a game-saving moment for South Africa in that game. And even later years after that, when both Joost was very sick, He was bound to a wheelchair, couldn't speak, couldn't walk anymore, and Joma had issues as well. Just before both of them died, Jonah went back to South Africa. And that's what I enjoy about the rivalry is, he went to South Africa and visited James Small, who was his opponent. He was a wing for South Africa. And then he went to Joost's house and he visited with the family and sat there. And that's on YouTube. You can see it all. It's just amazing, And Joost says, like, how do you remember me? And Jonah says, how do I remember you? You're the guy that took my legs out. You're the guy that I was thinking, yeah, I'm going to score and it's going to be so good and I'm going to get the try line. And the next thing, my legs were gone. That's how I remember you. You took my legs away and I couldn't score the try. But that was an amazing tackle from Joost. And unfortunately, all those three players that I mentioned, James Small, the wing for South Africa, Joost van der Westhuizen is in our scrum off, and Jonah Lomu, all three have passed away at very young ages. Very sad, and such a loss for the game of rugby. But what a day that was! But what a tackle that Joost made once again. South Africa versus the All Blacks, and that actual game I still remember so well because I left South Africa in '95 in January. So we watched that game in Taiwan. And the time difference is 6 hours between Taiwan and South Africa. So when the game started in South Africa, it was 11 o'clock at night in Taiwan. And there were a lot of expats teaching English and friends that we've made, over the time that I've been there. I've been there since January, so just over half a year. And there were some guys from England there, most of them Australian, one or two New Zealanders, and then a bunch of Springbok fans, South Africans, working there. And we were all in my friend's apartment and we watched, and my goodness, we made noise. It was bad. It was so bad that the police eventually came to arrest us because they came once and the game should have finished maybe around about 12, but then we didn't. I mean, how do you know? It's going to go extra time. How do you know the teams are going to be even at the end of full time? So about the second or third time they came, we promised them, listen, there's only 5 more minutes, after 5. We didn't know it was going to end as a draw at full time. So when they said, okay, but if you make one more noise, the whole street is complaining about you guys. And lo and behold, after full time, they played extra time. And then when that drop goal went over, oh my goodness, you can imagine the New Zealanders in our crew just screaming and the South Africans screaming. So the police came again.
Oh no.
And so I remember that World Cup final very, very well. Great memories as well. So so many, as I say, just the memories that I have from the games between South Africa and New Zealand, whether it was watching in Taiwan, watching as a young boy in South Africa, watching as a married man in South Africa, it was just so many good memories. So, and even to this day, watching the games here in America now, it's amazing. So good memories.
Yeah, that 1995 Rugby World Cup. I could imagine the excitement, the feelings you had, being that you had just left South Africa not too long before that. So yeah, I could imagine the emotions that Rugby World Cup brought to you in 1995. So yeah, and it's unfortunate you had mentioned Jonah and Juice. Juice is his first name?
Joost.
Joost.
Yeah,
Okay. I could pronounce his first name. So
that's fine.
unfortunately, both of them, you had mentioned that video of Jonah visiting him. I believe it was in 2015, so 20 years after that historic final in 1995. That meeting was a couple months before Jonah passed in 2015, I believe. I looked this up. He actually passed on my 33rd birthday, on my birthday,
Okay.
November 18th. So yeah.
Okay. Mm.
And then Jules passing a couple of years later due to Lou Gehrig's disease, a couple of years, if I'm not mistaken, years later. So yeah, it's unfortunate. Two greats of the rugby world having, deaths due to illness, but great memories, I'm sure, for you nonetheless.
Very
Pretty
much
cool
so.
to
Yeah,
watch.
great guys, great players, great. What do you call it? Ambassadors for the game.
Yes. Yes. Cool. Cool. So another great moment for you, I'm sure, Rifle, was the 2023 Rugby World Cup. Being that the Springboks, this was their second consecutive. I mean, there was the 2019. Not to, you know, throw the 2019 Rugby World Cup away, because that was again, Springboks have had won that competition as well, and nobody expected them to win. And then fast forward 4 years later, 2023, the Springboks repeat and are champions of the Rugby World Cup competition again. And the final again, because we're talking about the Springbok and All Blacks rivalry, was of course the Springboks against the All Blacks in that 2023 Rugby World Cup final. And again, Peter, I know that's his first name. You can pronounce his last name.
Pieter Stef de Toy.
There you go. Yes. Come on, South Africa. You got to help me out with these names here. Uh, had a monster defensive game in that final with 28 tackles. And these weren't just regular tackles. Just if everyone watching this episode would just go to YouTube and find a highlight reel of Peter making these tackles, seems like every single tackle he made in that game was just bone crushing. Every single one, you'll just go, oof. And he was really the engine, at least on the defensive side, for the Springboks, because it seemed like in many cases where the All Blacks was building momentum, you see Peter making a huge tackle and just, I'm sure the All Blacks player would be like, what in the world just hit me? So yeah, he had a monster defensive game
I
that
think to
final.
this very day, Geordie Barrett still has nightmares of Pieter Stef de Toy coming to him, because sometimes he got the ball and Pieter Stef at the same time. And as you say, they were bone crushing tackles. But to Geordie's defense and to Geordie's honor, man, he took it, he stood up and he went on. But man, he got slaughtered 2 or 3 times so hard that one thought, oh, if you get up from that, that's a man. So yeah, he did very well. But South Africa, when Rassie took over, we were bad. I mean, we were not doing good in World Rugby at all. We were one of the lowest ranked for South Africa ever. And Rassie took over. And when he and Jacques Nienaber, the other coach, when they got together, they said, okay, we're going to work towards the 2023 World Cup. We're going to start, we'll build a new team. We'll change rugby the way that it is in South Africa. We'll change the team, everything, culture, everything needs to change because we are in a very bad place. So we'll get this team, youngsters, we'll pull them out, we'll work with them, and then 2023 we'll be ready. Lo and behold, 2019, they made it to the finals, and we played against Owen Wilson and England in the finals. And no one gave us a chance. But then the thing was, well, you said that in 2023 you were going to win, so now the pressure was on because that's what they were building towards. And in the 2023 World Cup, New Zealand was not doing well. Their rugby was really, really, really not the standard that people are used to having New Zealand play at. And there were talks about, infighting even at practice at the World Cup, and they were not doing well. And the whole rugby world, I'm sure, wrote them off because they had to face Ireland in the quarterfinals. Now, I know we're talking here about South Africa and New Zealand, but Ireland has never, it's called the Irish curse. They've never gone past the quarterfinal in a Rugby World Cup, no matter how good their team is. And previous year in the Six Nations, they won the Six Nations. I mean, they were just so good. They were on a high. And everyone was saying, this is Ireland's year. Ireland can do it this year. And if it wasn't Ireland, France could definitely do it. I mean, those teams were so good. So in the quarterfinals, when New Zealand, they went through in a knockout stage play, what do you call it, to get to the quarterfinals, the knockout rounds.
Mm-hmm.
They had to get through, and they made it. And then now they're in the quarterfinals, and they drew Ireland. They had to play against Ireland. Everyone was, okay, there's not a snowball's chance in hell that New Zealand can beat Ireland. Ireland is just too good. And man, if you go and watch that game, I'm telling you, and that's one thing about all of these teams, but New Zealand, you cannot write them off.
Mm-hmm.
You can never say they can't, because they will surprise you. I mean, just the honor, just the tradition, just the rugby in them is just so amazing. And lo and behold, New Zealand beat Ireland on the day. Oh, and there was a portion of play in the end of the game where I think there were 30 consecutive phases for Ireland. And New Zealand, all they had to do was tackle, just defend, just defend, just defend. So New Zealand win, they go through, they win the semis. And now the finals of 1995, Springboks versus New Zealand. And I mean, the whole rugby world was just waiting for that. And South Africa was doing good. We won the quarterfinals against France by 1 point. Semi-finals by 1 point. England again. And then the finals, we played New Zealand. And on the day, I mean, you do not get a bigger game than South Africa, New Zealand, and then having it at the finals of the Rugby World Cup. It doesn't get bigger than that. It's just larger than large. And at the end of the day, South Africa won once again by 1 point. And South Africa played well. They were good, but even I myself say we were lucky. There were a couple of calls that definitely went our way. I know New Zealand scored a try, and then after the fact, the ref came back and the touch judge and the TMO, they said there was a forward pass or knock on, something like that. So it was just, unfortunate that that happened. But at the end of it all, we won by 1 point. And then Pieter Steph du Toit, as you said, just tackling 28 tackles. And just, as I say, Geordie, my goodness. Unfortunately, in the game, very, very first couple of minutes, New Zealand captain Sam Cane, high tackle, not high tackle, but involving the head. He got a red card. South Africa captain Siya Kolisi, also in a tackle involving the head. He got a yellow card, so he was off for 10 minutes. So that was also a little bit of a niggle in the game, having guys sent off. Sam Cane red, so off for the whole game. Siya Kolisi, 10 minutes. But at the end of it all, South Africa won. Second World Cup in a row. The only team that has done that before was obviously who else? Then New Zealand. Their team that did it, 2011 and 15. Oh my goodness, Dan Carter, Richie McCaw, Sonny Bill Williams, all of those guys, just amazing team. Just, and not just winning during the World Cup, the 4 years between the two World Cups as well, just winning all their games. They were so good. I mean, you almost didn't stand a chance when you played against them. They were just, they were in another league. They were on another level of rugby, and they were just great. So now people were saying if they won, then they would be the team with the most World Cups. If South Africa won, they would be the most. So they would tie there with the amount of World Cups won. If South Africa wins, they'll be 2 in a row. Only New Zealand had done that. So there was so much history and so many stats, in the game going into it. But as I say, at the end of it, South Africa won. So, yeah, just an amazing game. And then, as Rassie said, 2023 we'll win. 2023, we're planning, we're working towards that. And we definitely got the rub of the green that day. There's no doubt about that. And, we won. So, New Zealand, once again, we speak so many times on this program about kicking. They had 2 kicks that they missed that were in very kickable positions, and they missed both of those kicks. They only lost by 1 point. So, it was theirs to take. It was theirs to bring home the cup. But, on the day, as I say, we got the rub of the green. And very happy to bring home the Rugby World Cup to South Africa.
Yeah, yeah, it was a very intense game. But the rugby gods were in favor of South Africa that day. So yeah.
Mm.
I remember you mentioning this. You've mentioned this quite a few times. You know, the fact that South Africa winning so many close games, all three, the quarterfinals, the semifinal, and the final, all three were won by 1 point.
1 point. Yeah. I don't know. I couldn't watch. Not one of those
Yes.
three games could I finish. It's just too intense. I get too emotional, too worked
Yeah.
up, and I had to leave. Sometimes my parents will chase me out of the room. Sometimes I'll just leave by myself. But I could not finish one of those three games. It was torture.
Yeah.
So, oh my goodness. In any case, yeah, it was like you said, the rugby gods smiled and we won. So it was a wonderful World Cup. France did a great job hosting. You know, everything went well. It was a great experience, and I had lots of friends that went and texted me and sent pictures from there, and it was great having live feeds from France when they were over there in the stands and showing us what was happening. But watching it on TV from this side was very exciting as well, nerve-wracking to say the least.
Mm. I can only imagine. And just in case the audience is wondering, no, why. Uh, that's not why Rifle is bald.
Might be one or two grey hairs in the beard that World Cup added, so that might
Yeah.
be true.
People figure that 2023 World Cup just competition is, he pulled your hair out.
I definitely did.
Wow. So yeah, and just touching upon, you had mentioned the 2011 and 2015 wins by New Zealand with all the great players they had. They seemed virtually unbeatable. It kind of takes me back to the Dream Team. If you're familiar with the Dream Team of basketball, uh,
Basketball.
yeah, back in the late 80s, early 90s, when you had, in my opinion, the greatest basketball player ever to play, Michael Jordan. So, some might say LeBron, but I'm in the Michael Jordan camp. And then you had Larry Bird, you had Magic Johnson, amongst other great basketball players of that era. So it kind of takes me back to the Dream Team. Although New Zealand is one team with all these players. The Dream Team had players from various NBA teams. So, yeah, I'm sure it was a lot of amazing moments for that era of New Zealand rugby.
Definitely,
So,
yeah. And players from those teams, I think now Ma Anonu, he's still playing. He's playing in France.
wow.
I think he's 43 now.
Mm.
So he's out of those. Some of those guys that played then. Rotalik is still playing in Japan, I believe. Sam Kane was a youngster then, but also is playing. Aaron Smith also coming through. So there are a couple of those guys still playing today. Most of them, not for New Zealand anymore. Some of them just retired after the 2023 World Cup. But some of those that were in that great team are still playing rugby, are just not at that level anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, 40, you said 42?
Either
Uh,
42 or 43, yeah,
wow, wow.
Ma'anonu.
Okay. So he's like the Tom Brady of
Yeah, yeah,
rugby.
he's still going strong. He played in San Francisco for a while. He was in America, played there for a while,
Oh, okay.
and then went back to. He's playing in France now. Yeah, they're top 14, I believe.
Wow. Wow. So again, so many things that you could choose from this rivalry, uh, but obviously we can't talk about every single one, and we're just talking about different moments from the past 30 years only. And we probably have other moments throughout these 30 years, past 30 years, that we could talk about, but we just chose these few moments here. This next moment really speaks to the culture of rugby. And it was the moment when Artie Surveyor played in his 100th test match. And, you know, for those of you who are not familiar with the game, when you're 100th test match, you are called a centurion rugby player, meaning you played at least 100 test match. You played in at least 100 test matches. And one very special moment after the All Blacks, who actually won that game, and that happened actually during the Rugby Championship, during this year's Rugby Championship, during the first Test match between the Springboks and All Blacks, was after the game when you had the Springbok captain who was the captain that game. I believe his name was
Jesse
James
Creel.
Jesse Creel. I was going to say James Creel. It's Jesse
Jesse
Creel.
Creel. Yeah.
Giving a little present to Artie Surveyor. And then in the background, you see Artie Surveyor's daughter, young daughter, run to Siya Kolisi and give him a huge hug, jump into his arms and give him a huge hug. So yeah, that was a very special moment. You know, you seeing two rival teams playing in a huge match for both teams, because it's always a huge match when these two teams get together. But it was a special match, a very special match, especially for Artie Surveyor, being it was his 100th test match. So just to see that special moment after the game, it was pretty cool to watch, knowing that on the field, you know, we're here to play and we're going to give it to you as much as possible. But off the field, it's a lot of respect, a lot of love, and it's truly, truly amazing to see that type of culture in the game of rugby.
Yeah, I think that is amazing because, as you say, the game was so big in the sense of it's Ardie's 100th game. They're playing at Eden Park where they've got this record and the Springboks could break the record. All of these things happening, yet Ardie's daughter, unaware of any of that. You know, she saw Uncle Sia and she just ran, and you can hear in the background, Uncle Sia, and she jumped up. You know, all the cameras are there in the newspapers and they're taking pictures, and the South African captain is handing over this prize. She could care less about any of that pompous, all the, you know, festivities that are going on. She just saw her dad's friend and someone she loves and likes and just jumped into his arms, you know. So, and that's nice. The innocence of a child, just proving the friendship and the love of the two there. Yeah, I mean, yeah, these dads have just played against each other and there's still blood on their jerseys and all of that. And she's just so happy to see Siya Kolisi. So that is, I think, a wonderful representation of not just the game, but specifically the rivalry that South Africa has with New Zealand. Off the field, they're absolutely just great mates and great friends.
Yeah, that's pretty cool to see and watch. And I'm wondering if after that moment when all the cameras were off, if Artie went to his daughter like, "I'm still your favorite rugby player, am I right?" I wonder what his daughter's answer would be.
Yeah.
If she
They
wants a
play
good
different
Christmas,
numbers, so she can say
yeah.
her dad's her favorite number 8 and Siya Kolisi is her favorite number
Okay,
6.
there you go. That's the loophole.
There we go.
Yeah, so yeah, that was a great moment to see. And just, you know, we kind of did this episode out of order, and that's okay because it was just sharing great moments over the past, personal moments for you, Rifle, over the past 30 years or so of this rivalry. Is again another game between the Springboks and All Blacks in 1992. And this was the year where Springboks were allowed to play rugby internationally again due to their sanctions because of the apartheid years in South Africa. So yeah, that 1992 game, a game in which Danny, see, I want to say Gerber because that's how you pronounce it in English, but what's the right pronunciation of it?
Dani Gerber.
Okay, see, you know, I get the Donnie right.
Yeah, good. Dani Gerber.
Uh, who many consider him to be the greatest rugby player of all time, if not in. He's definitely on the in conversation of being the greatest rugby player of all time by some. We've spoken many times about Rassie Erasmus, the head coach of the Springboks, and I was watching a interview that he did with Donnie a few months ago, and Rossi was like, I would consider you probably on my list, definitely of the greatest rugby player of all time. And it was just cool to watch. Donnie he's a funny guy. He loves to laugh, makes a lot of jokes. Actually, in that interview, they were comparing calves, not animal calf, their leg calves. And obviously, Donnie had huge calves. I couldn't believe how big his calves were. They were huge.
He's a powerful man, yeah.
Yeah. So, and just listening to his story of he was actually a cricket player and played a lot of soccer, and he was introduced to rugby by the school that I believe Rossi went to when he was during his young play years. So, Donnie wasn't even on the path of playing rugby in his early years. So yeah, just that year being that South Africa being able to play internationally again after being sanctioned. Uh, yeah, I'm sure was a great year, probably a memorable year for you, being you what, in your 20s at that time, late teens, early 20s. So yeah, and then Donnie being the scorer of the first try for the Springboks, from coming back to international play. So that was a huge year, and another huge game between the Springboks and the All Blacks, even though the Springboks fell short and the All Blacks won that game. But that game nonetheless was a historic game.
Very much so, yeah. It was the first game, as you say, after we were coming out of isolation because of apartheid. We couldn't play. We were banned to play any international teams. Yet I can still remember when I was a youngster, 3, 4, 5, that South Africa would go to New Zealand, and they had a team that came to South Africa called the Cavaliers. They tried to play rugby, but obviously at that age, I didn't understand apartheid. I didn't understand why we couldn't play. And when I would watch those games, as I've said earlier, we would wake up early in the morning. My dad would wake us up, and we would sit and have our coffee and rusks, and a lot of guys in the house watching those games. And then in New Zealand, when they played, I can remember it so well that, you had people protesting, people running on the field. There were helicopters flying above the field, throwing flower bombs down. So I couldn't understand why that was happening. I didn't understand the political side of everything. But then, as you say, this first game, after we were finished isolation, the thing is that we could only play against people in South Africa. We couldn't play against people overseas. So how do you measure yourself if you are this tiny country on the southern tip of Africa, and the only rugby you know and the only rugby you can play is amongst your own countrymen? How do you know how good you are? How do you know if you haven't been tested against the rest of the world. So for being in isolation for so many years, and this the first game to be against the All Blacks, I mean, it once again, I keep on saying it couldn't get bigger than that. You can just imagine, okay, South Africa, you'll be able to play international rugby now. Choose any team in the whole world. Who would you want to play against? Obviously, it would be the All Blacks, and we got that chance and that opportunity. And as you say, we lost that day, which we did. I mean, if you look at the stats, New Zealand is way, I think I don't know, 20 or so games ahead of us in the winning ratio. They've won 20 more, something like that, games versus the Springboks. It's changed in the last couple of years since Rassie came back. But I mean, up until then, they were definitely the best in the world. There was no doubt about that. So, but having that first game after isolation and just watching that game, I was at university. So just, oh my goodness, just a bunch of guys, watching, and we can play international rugby again. And now we can really see, because we all played rugby. I mean, that was we, and how do you know how good you are? And we played, that era was, when I was at university, we were speaking about Joos van der Westhuizen, and Joos was played in my years, same age group and so on, played against him. So now you get 1990s, early 90s, you get this game to see, and now we're going to see really how good we are. I mean, New Zealand, best in the world. Are they going to come to our grounds in South Africa, and are they going to pummel us by 50 points? We don't know how good we are, because we've only played against one another in club teams, and that's all you have. And now you've got a national team that you pull together and never played together. And they play New Zealand, who plays regularly against other nations. You've got the Bledisloe Cup that they play every year. So, I mean, and then we didn't lose by far. I mean, it was a great game. But to watch that try of Dani Gerber, and just, I can remember it so clearly, getting the ball, they passed, he made a dummy. And as I've said to you so many times on this program, Rugby 101, if you're a defender and you have to tackle, you always go for the man with the ball. And Dani Gerber has the ball, pretends he's going to pass, does a dummy to the outside, breaks in, and he goes and scores. And after he scores, he puts his fist up in the air, South Africa's back. And then we could see, wow, we really are pretty good at rugby, because New Zealand, the best in the world, they couldn't come and thrash us. They really had to play very hard to win that game. But it was just amazing to be back, and that we could play now against the best in the world and test ourselves and see how good we really were. So remember that, being at university, watching with the guys, and obviously shouting and screaming after that. And it's just, it was mayhem, but such a good time. Also, great game, and yeah, as I say, that was in the 90s. So quite a couple of years ago, and rugby has moved on. And for the last 2 World Cups, South Africa under Rassie has done very well. So very, very grateful and enjoying the position that South Africa is now. It can't last forever. Life is just, you go up, you go down. It's like a wheel that turns. Some stage you're at the top, and then the next thing you look, you're right at the bottom again. That's in life. That's everything, not just sport. But while we're at the top, we're enjoying it. And it's nice to have these competitions against New Zealand, who almost never have a down. They always, seem to be riding that wave. They're always that good. So it's a wonderful rivalry, and it just brings out the best in the two countries and the two teams when they play on the day. There's never a day that you can write one of these teams off and say, okay, there's no chance that they can win today. And that's always nice, because you have to be your best on the day to beat the other team.
Yes, yes. And you said it multiple times. The top 10 ranked teams, according to World Rugby, it's, any team could take it that day.
Yes.
At the top. When you have, and you have the Springboks #1 currently, obviously, New Zealand, France, Ireland, all the powerhouses, Australia, Argentina, not in that specific order, but all the powerhouses of rugby in the top 10, any team could take it, take the win at any time. So yeah, it's great to see, and just great to see that, again, we've spoken about this many times, just seeing a team like Argentina, over the past decade or so, just growing into a powerhouse. It's great to see for the sport of rugby that the sport is growing in other countries that are not necessarily known as rugby countries, so to speak. So yeah, it's great to see. And you had mentioned, uh, that uh, the All Blacks, uh, from the time of this recording, there's been 110 matches between the Springboks and All Blacks throughout their history. 110 matches, 63 won by New Zealand, and 43 won by South Africa, and
Yeah, 20 games. There you go.
there's been 4 draws. So yeah, and wow, so it's 110 games, and that just, you know, I was wondering just the other day. I googled what are the best rivalries in sports, historic rivalries in sports, and obviously most of them were American because I'm in America and I used Google and it's probably biased. Um, but I looked at a different list and a couple of lists, Springboks and All Blacks actually showed up. So I was like, okay, this is very
Yeah.
interesting. But you have your typical American rivalries, like in the NBA, the classic rivalry, historic rivalries, Los Angeles Lakers and the Boston Celtics. Then in football, you have the Packers, Green Bay Packers and Chicago Bears. In baseball, you have the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees, amongst others. So yeah, and please forgive me, NHL. I don't follow NHL a lot, so I don't even know what the biggest rivalry is. So please forgive me, all you hockey fans. But yeah, I think the All Blacks and the Springboks is a very underrated, uh, at least for Americans, is a very underrated. Obviously, uh, is a very underrated rivalry, and if just looking into and preparing for this episode, it was an amazing thing just to learn about all the great moments. And again, we just I wouldn't even say skin the surface. We maybe skin the surface is probably not even the right term because there's hundreds of great moments. Who knows how many great moments throughout this historic rivalry. So yeah, it was pretty
Yeah,
cool
now
to
you
learn.
talk about jet lag. When they started playing in 1904, what did you have? Boat lag, ship lag.
Yes.
If you think about it, we're so
Yeah.
used to living in the day and age we are. You get on a plane, you fly to New Zealand, man, it's far. The time zones you go through, the jet lag, it's so difficult to play there and vice versa, them coming here. But imagine getting on a ship
Oh, I can't
to go
imagine.
over there to play or them to come here. I mean, but they've been doing that since 1904. Can you imagine, like, really getting on a boat, sailing all the way to New Zealand to go and play rugby? You don't know what the weather's going to be like. You have no
Mm,
idea if you're going to make it. I mean, but they did it.
mm.
That's how big an occasion it is when these two teams can play against one another.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine being on the first airplanes.
No, that
Uh,
long. It's long. I'm telling you,
yeah.
to New Zealand, it's a
Well,
far
it's not
way away.
even. It's not even I mean, if you take a boat, it's very dangerous because, like you say, it's you don't know. They didn't have radar back then, where
Yeah.
where the storms are coming. So the boat, and obviously the boats now have weather radars where they can avoid the weather. Um, but airplanes, I mean, I can imagine. I can imagine taking an airplane in the 40s or 50 or whatever the first flights were. But like an
Yeah.
airplane, what is this? A flying machine? This is sorcery, witchcraft. So yeah, I agree. So with that, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Rifle, thanks again for sharing these
Well,
special
very welcome.
moments. And again, we just skimmed the surface of this rivalry. I'm sure in the future, maybe we could do another episode, talk about other different moments of this rivalry. So yeah, with that, everyone, again, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and until next time, everybody,
Cheers, everyone.
take care. Thank you for watching this episode of Rugby with Rifle. Remember to press the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet to support this podcast.